breaking news just a bit earlier today. It was announced that the ex-Illinois deputy who was convicted in the fatal shooting of Sonya Massey, putting up this tweet that we have there from Ben Crump. But we do know that it was a former Illinois sheriff's deputy who was found guilty of second-degree murder today in the fatal shooting of Sonya Massey. You may remember her. She was an unarmed black woman whose killing sparked protest in a Department of Justice investigation last year. This verdict, though, against Sean Grayson, I should say, the 31-year-old, arrived on the second day of those deliberations. Grayson was charged with first-degree murder, but an option for second-degree murder was added to jury instructions before those deliberations began. And so to talk a lot more about what we saw today, what this conviction is, and truly what it means for those family members, I now want to bring into the conversation legal analyst Jeremy Rosenthal. Jeremy, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. Big day for justice for Sonya Massey's family, but let's talk about this ultimately. Sean Grayson, the 31-year-old, was convicted of second-degree murder. Can you sort of explain why that charge was added to the jury instructions just moments before they went in to deliberate?
This would be called a lesser included offense. What happens is a lot of crimes, a lot of charges, not just murder, but other charges that theft or things like that, criminal mischief, vandalism, have what are called lesser included offenses, meaning that you can charge one type of charge based on either the amount or the result, or in the case of a murder, what's called a mental state. And if the jury doesn't believe that, then they might be able to take a step-down charge or a step-down charge. It's a strategical decision, really from the defense or from the prosecution if they want to add a lesser included offense. The reason being is sometimes as a defense lawyer, if you think that the prosecution will not be able to get a conviction on the highest charge, you might want to be acquitted on everything completely and not give the jury one of those secondary options. In this instance, the first-degree murder basically would say, look, this is just straight-up murder. It was excessive. He just came and killed her. In this instance, the second-degree charge essentially tracked his mental state, saying, look, well, it was still unjustified. There was no self-defense, but we could see how it was a bit of a more confusing situation. So as in all murder cases, you always track the intent element. So it was a strategic decision here by the parties to add that lesser included, at least by the prosecution, to see if, look, we don't prove the highest thing, at least we get something here.
I have to ask you, Jeremy, it was 2 days of deliberations that went on in this case. Are you surprised that they came to this conclusion so quickly, or is this something that was expected when you're talking about the added element of those lesser included charges?
These things can be very complicated, and there's a lot to go over. Jurors are very good about being thorough, and especially when you have a trial that's this length, you get a lot of exhibits, a lot of testimony, a lot of jury instructions to sort of sort through. Sometimes those can be confusing. So a deliberation about this length is not necessarily very surprising. Again, we want jurors to be thorough. We want them to sort of look at everything. It'll be interesting to hear what they have to say after the fact. Sometimes a lot of jurors will come and tell us, look, we all really basically agreed in everything. We just wanted to review it. Maybe there was some legitimate debate here. Maybe it was a very close call on that first-degree murder and ultimately an easier call on the second-degree murder. Or maybe it was a very clear that the first-degree murder wasn't met and the jury was potentially hung up even on the second-degree murder. So we always have to kind of look and sort of cut that apart. But it's good that your jurors are so thorough, because 11 hours, I mean, that is a lot of time, relatively speaking, when some cases take so long. The more evidence there is to go through, the longer it's going to take.
I have to ask you, Jeremy, we also know that this year the county agreed to pay $10 million settlement to Massey's family. This is an amount that's believed to be the largest single payout in the county's history. Are you surprised by that when you were looking at truly any of the elements in this case? Did that surprise you, that number?
That's a big number. And look, I mean, how much money replaces a human life? It's hard to know. And a lot of times, counties, municipalities, states are very limited in their ability to settle, and they're very limited in that funding. But I think this goes to show just sort of how bad the facts in this case were. And it wasn't just the murder of Sonya Massey. It was Officer Grayson's history, if you will. And really, in many ways, I think there was some argument there that it was kind of a negligent hire. This is a man who had been dishonorably discharged from the Army. This is a man who bounced around from police agency to police agency. This is a man who really probably should not have been wearing a badge and a gun. He did not use proper protocol when it came to de-escalation techniques and tactics, which I think you see across the country is really just sort of at the forefront of a lot of police officer training these days. And what makes all this worse is it was on body camera, right? A very visceral, very real, very disturbing fact pattern. And look, they were sort of justified in settling it. The jury told them this. They convicted him of murder.
And Jeremy, before I let you go, we do know that the former deputy is now facing up to 20 years in prison. The judge scheduled that sentencing hearing for January 29th at the top of next year. What do you expect to come out of that? Is the full 20 years truly on the table, likely to get something similar to that with that conviction of second-degree murder?
It's really hard to know because it's going to be completely up to the judge, and the judge doesn't have a whole lot of guidelines to go by as you would have, say, in a federal case. So it's really going to be up to that judge's discretion between now and then. With pre-sentence reports and investigations, maybe there's some mitigation type stuff that's going to come out for this officer, maybe some of his mental stressors, maybe some of his background. So we don't know. But clearly, this could have been a lot worse of a legal outcome for him. He avoided a first-degree murder charge. So the ceiling is essentially lower for him. That said, anytime you have a judge that's doing the sentencing, to some degree, it's always going to be a bit of a political situation, right? Judges like getting reappointed. They like getting reelected. They like getting tapped for more work and all these things. So you would think that the pressure put on this judge to hit a high sentence here would be sort of big. So I do think it would be, it's very likely that you're going to see something closer to that 20 years rather than something on the bottom, the minimum being 4 years.
As we're still watching some of this body camera footage, I want to remind folks that viewer discretion is advised, as we know this could be triggering to some folks who are watching it. But Jeremy, do you think that this conviction and overall sentencing, even though it's not a federal case, could impact other cases in other states as things continue to happen in the future?
One of the things in Illinois that's come from this is the Sonya Massey law. And what that says is it basically tries to limit bad cops or unqualified police officers from sort of hopping around. America is a huge place. We have a lot of communities, and police officers, police work is a very competitive line of work in some instances. It's hard to get the top jobs in the best jurisdictions that pay the most, that have the best training. In those instances, a lot of agencies, they reward you for education, for degrees, for training, for all types of different factors. But not everybody is that lucky, and not everybody has that kind of money to spend on people. So you do get some turnover in some of these smaller jurisdictions. You get police officers who will bounce around from community to community, and not all of them have very good records. It's a supply and demand issue. A lot of these places need police officers, and they have to take gambles, unfortunately, on some people with checkered pasts. Illinois took a step towards trying to clean that up. So I do think that that's probably part of a broader effort that you see nationwide when it comes to having police officers who might not be qualified. That said, look, being a police officer is a very difficult job, and it's just not for everybody.
And so we appreciate, as always, Jeremy Rosenthal, legal analyst, to help us break down the very latest. As the 31-year-old, you see him on the screen, the ex-Illinois deputy Sean Grayson has officially been convicted of second-degree murder, this in the killing of Sonya Massey. Thanks so much, Jeremy, for joining us.
Have a good day.